Hi, how you doing? This is the Gamertron and welcome back to the Gamertron Show. After recently beating Dark Souls free, completing my first playthrough, starting New Game Plus and starting up some new characters, new games, replaying a bit of Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 for some reference and of course for the sake of fun, replaying the Dark Souls games and experiencing and beating Dark Souls free for the very first time has made me come to the conclusion that the Dark Souls games embodies what's great about video games and the true majesty and power, wonder, and emotion that video games can stir. Every second of playing a Dark Souls game, it feels like an instant classic. It feels like it borrows from the best of what gaming has to offer, from open world games to RPGs to hack and slashes to fantasy to adventure to action to the horror genres. Dark Souls just encompasses so much about what makes video games great, about what makes fiction great. Looking at the games from a visual standpoint, Dark Souls is a thing of beauty. How it takes creativity and inspiration from different cultures and media, other forms of fiction, and brings it all together to create this unique blend of a dark fantasy world, crafted around this epic and yet secret and hidden story of kingdoms, lineage, destiny, order, chaos, knights, wizards, monsters. Some of this you will never know about or see about unless you investigate it. That's another thing the Dark Souls games nail on the head: mystery. Sure, yes, there's the internet and you can look up this stuff for yourself, but when you're able to piece together your own conclusions based off the little secrets and hints, dialogue, and backstory that can be found in the game, it's rewarding, investing, immersive, satisfying to uncover the grim tales of the Dark Souls universe. There are few, very few games that pull off what Dark Souls pulls off, mixing, meshing, combining all these different ideas, all these different genres, from dark fantasy to horror to mystery to epic to drama to action. And all of this can be seen, discovered, even implied by just the visuals alone. While yes, there's the hidden narrative that you can discover through reading text, through reading into dialogue, but just looking at the design, the visual construction of the environments, the characters, the enemies, the armor, the weapons themselves tell a story of their own. When you really admire and analyze the different creature designs, every design for every monster in Dark Souls tells a different story of once being royalty, of once being a man, now monster, of being a greedy sloth or a frenzied lunatic. From a visual and narrative standpoint, how Dark Souls presents itself as a video game, as fiction, as art, is brilliant and beautiful in itself. Not many video games do this. Many video games go for flashy. They go for just what looks cool. And while there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, how Dark Souls is able to weave an entire narrative based on very small intricate details is something to be admired and praised in itself. Because it actually takes some creative courage to want to tell a story or present a world, present your fiction in such a matter, in such a non-casual manner, because the common majority audience prefer a linear story that's fed to them. Dark Souls doesn't do that. Dark Souls challenges you to see the bigger picture, and that's one of the reasons that makes these games so special from a visual and narrative perspective. But these are video games after all, and what's the most important thing when it comes to a video game is the gameplay, and that's something else Dark Souls knocks out the park in terms of being a hack and slash and deep customizable RPG game. There's not a lot of AAA RPGs out there. There's not a lot of AAA dark fantasy RPGs out there anymore. There used to be in the early 2000s, in the 90s. Dark fantasy RPGs were a staple of gaming, then they disappeared for a while. However, they have been making a comeback these past few years, with the rise of such games as Dark Souls to fill that market. There used to be a decent amount and good variety of different hack and slash games back in the day, in terms of AAA gaming, but nowadays with AAA gaming, it's mostly shooters, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love shooters, but I love to mix things up with a good hack and slash as well, and Dark Souls fills that void of using swords and shields, axes and arrows, magic and melee. And to add on top of the well-made hack and slash gameplay mechanics, we have a true to form RPG underneath, with different character builds and playstyles in the purest forms of the terms, where you get to customize the different statistics and attributes of your character, combining that with the different weapons and armor you equipped to create a character build and playstyle all your own. just like in classic RPGs. Dark Souls is one of the very few AAA franchises that do this nowadays, that let you intricately craft your character into something unique and your own. Don't get me wrong, there are quite a few other video games nowadays that do this, just not exactly in the same vein of Dark Souls that makes Dark Souls unique and special. And speaking of things that make Dark Souls unique and special, which besides everything else, there are also the boss battles and multiplayer. The boss battles in the Dark Souls games are some of the most iconic bosses in all of gaming. The past few years, every time a Souls game has been released, whether it be Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, whatever, with the release of every Souls game, the boss battles have been the thing, the intricate part of each game that steals the show and captures everyone's awe. It's hard. It's really hard to not absolutely adore the boss battles of the Dark Souls games. It's hard not to make a list of video game bosses and just not fill it all with Dark Souls bosses. Because from a visual standpoint, they are epic, grand, monstrous, and sometimes terrifying from their designs. They're challenging, fun, and memorable through their unique gameplay mechanics, their attacks, abilities, the arena of where the boss battle is taking place. And the music, oh my god, the music for the bosses of the Dark Souls games. The different boss themes, the different boss music is more than enough to completely capture your attention and fill you with adrenaline. The Dark Souls games know what makes a great boss battle, and they're quite frankly one of the key characteristics of the Dark Souls games that keep people buying the games. People buy Dark Souls games for the boss battles, and not many games can make that claim, make that statement. People buy our video game because our boss battles are so damn good. But that's not the only reason people buy the Dark Souls games. Let's remember, these games aren't entirely single player. There is Dark Souls unique multiplayer. It's iconic multiplayer, which very few games have ever tried to emulate or imitate, because Dark Souls multiplayer is one of a kind. The idea of invading other people's single-player games either to kill them or aid them, form parties, or epic duels. Show off all your characters, your different builds, armor sets, and weapons. Participate in some jolly cooperation, or just try to fuck with each other for fun. That's one of the things I love about Dark Souls multiplayer. Even though I don't play Dark Souls multiplayer, I love the environment, the community that Dark Souls multiplayer has generated. It's not a community that's obsessed with being MLG pro, like so many other multiplayer shooters that have fortunately succumbed to this disease. We've got to be super competitive, on top of the leaderboards. No, fuck that. Dark Souls is just like, okay, here are the tools to connect with other players. Now do whatever you want and have fun. Of course, there is a specific sect of the Dark Souls multiplayer community that is very toxic, but unfortunately that comes with any and all multiplayer games. It's a shame, it's there. But for the most part, Dark Souls multiplayer is about fun. It's about fucking around. And not a lot of multiplayer games do that nowadays. They're either super competitive, super casual, obsessed with progression systems and unlocks, and Dark Souls is like, whatever. If players want to help each other, kill each other, troll each other, they can. Because that was originally what multiplayer was supposed to be about. And god damn, I can't help but love and appreciate Dark Souls for that, and everything else it does. Quite honestly, the video game community, the video game industry, we needed Dark Souls. We needed this game in our lives, in our world, in our universe. We needed Dark Souls. We needed these games because they embody what are so great about video games, and the power, and the potential, and the works of art that video games can be. Are the Dark Souls games for everybody? No. Are they great, iconic, classic video games nonetheless? Absolutely, and I love them to death. Praise the sun and praise Dark Souls. Anyways, that's been a video. I hope you liked the video. If you did indeed like the video in any way, shape, or form, please hit the like button. Hitting the like button helps you, helps me, helps everybody involved with the video. If you hit the like button, please leave a comment. What are your thoughts, feelings, and opinions on this video? Let me know in the comment section below. I love reading comments. Get nearly enough comments, please leave a comment. If you want to help out and support this video, then please share it on social media, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you want to help out and support me directly, then please consider pledging and becoming a patron on my Patreon. Anyways, guys, that's been a video, and I'll see you all later.